everybody, it's Romania Black. We're on episode 11 of My Hero Academia, Our Brawl. And last episode, is so good. The voice acting on Deku, the Ochaco assist, Deku gaining Black Whip, like there's all this stuff kind of in the works with this season. And it feels like the season, to me, kind of had a little bit of a slow start, just building up these Class 1A, Class 1B battles. But now we're reaching the climax of it. This is our final battle for this whole little mini arc here. And I feel like it's all been building up to this fight. And I'm really excited because at the end of this last episode, they really didn't give us much of a hint of which team was going to be ahead. Because, yeah, Deku's team obviously is a little bit disoriented because of Deku and having that whole kind of like blip where he kind of went crazy with his new powers. But it's still anybody's game. Like, Deku grabbing Shinsou's bandages there at the end was kind of like a sign of, we're not going down easily. So, I'm really excited to see where that goes. And to see which team ends up winning this battle. Because honestly, even though I've read the manga, I don't quite remember which team wins. I've not gone back and reread this part until I get done with the episodes and the reactions. So I don't know which team wins. Obviously, if Class 1A wins, they win the whole deal. If Class 1B wins, they win the whole deal. And then if it's a draw, then it's a draw for the whole thing. And neither team wins. So part of me is thinking maybe that Class 1B will lose because Shinsou was on a team that won and maybe he'll be on a team that loses. But then another part of me is like, but Team 1B, if Shinsou won both battles, then it would definitely be a guarantee that he'd be into the Class 1A or Class 1B because that's what he's vying for. So I don't know. But what I do know is that the episode last week, the animation, the voice acting, the plot, it all moved it chugged right along and it felt fresh to get an episode that was just go, 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 when some of the past episodes this season have kind of been a little bit slower to build up, and that could be just pacing with the season and the source material. We can talk about it in the spoiler discussion. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited to see where this episode goes, to see how it concludes. Usually the cores with this show, since there's 25 episodes, usually the core changes around episode 13. So we have probably the same OP ED for this episode and the next episode, and then we'll probably start a new OP, new ED for episode 13. So that's really exciting. I do kind of get excited when a show splits its cores and changes its OP and ED. I get excited because I want to see how it's different. And this OP and ED has been very nice and kind of soft and fun and lighthearted, kind of like the plot. But now that it's picking up, I'm like, ooh, is this going to change? Or we're going to get into the meat of what's going on outside of this Class 1A, Class 1B battle? Because we haven't really seen that. Last episode, we got our first glimpse of what's happening in the real world outside of these battles. We saw Tartarus and saw All For One and his creepiness. So it's like things are happening outside of the school while this is all going on. So I'm curious if we'll get more of that. If not, I'm sure this episode we won't because it's going to conclude probably the match. But next episode, I'm wondering if we're going to get more like what's happening outside. Because we saw like in the OP Mirio and Eri. And so seeing what's happening with them and more with Endeavor and things like that. So we shall see. But in any case, I'm excited, y'all. I hope y'all are too. I'm going to watch episode 11 here, then pause my reaction, go back and reread the manga chapters that cover this episode's content, and then we'll do a non-spoiler discussion and a spoiler discussion. So, fun times. But with that being said, we are going to start episode 11 here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Ooh! Okay. That was a really, really good episode. Hits you right in the feels, right? Oh, I've always liked Shinsou's character. I know some reactors are like Shinsou hardcore fans. I've always liked Shinsou's character. But I love Aizawa. Aizawa is one of my favorite in the show. And I really like Shinsou more now that we're seeing the parallels between Aizawa and him. Aizawa kind of views Shinsou sort of as a younger version of himself, it seems, because when they're doing the training there, which for the record, Shinsou like worming around wrapped up in the cloth was kind of like a cat being wrapped up in yarn, and it was adorable. But Shinsou's right. He's like, if you think about it, Shinsou and Aizawa have very similar types of powers. They're not powers that are based in strength, they're based in utility. So like Endeavor, his firepower, All Might's strength, Deku's ability, Bakugo's ability, they're all ones that they can use brute force to overwhelm an enemy. Whereas with Aizawa and Shinsou, their powers they don't have a strength to them. It's the power itself that's important. Like Aizawa being able to cancel quirks, and then Shinsou being able to control people based on his quirks. So they're not ones that are going to be brute strength to overpower a person, but they're one that you have to use strategically and in a proper fashion for them to be effective. And so Aizawa has a very good point. He's like, if you're going to survive as a hero, you can't just rely on your quirk. You also have to be strong in other means, and that's where the wrap and the bandage come into play. And Shinsou did a really good job of using it. It's just you're against the protagonist. Which, for the record, too, Monoma this episode. I loved Monoma this episode because Monoma, for all he is, for all the talk he is, and for as annoying as he can get, he has this power of he spouts out words constantly, and you think, oh, he's just spouting out words, but he's a very good manipulator. Like, there were several moments in this episode where Monoma was very convincing, like when Deku thought that he had one for all, and then Uraka's like, no, it's a bluff, and he's like, oh, it's a blank, which thank goodness he didn't absorb his power, because Monoma would have been gone to bits. But then too, when Mona was giving Uraka the speech, just to try to work and get her to talk, just to try to get her, and I love that Uraka just did the hand signal. She's like, I'm not speaking because I don't know if you've stolen Shinsou's ability. And him just trying to prod at her and saying that, I know I'm not the protagonist, I'm a supporting character, but sometimes the supporting characters outshine even the protagonist. It's such a nice jab by Horikoshi to say, like, oh yeah, sometimes in manga and anime, it's the side characters that we root for more than the main character. And it's like, oh, that's a nice little jab there, Horikoshi. Nicely done. And Monoma, it was just so good. And then, of course, it kind of backfires. Because Uraka, as good as Deku and Shinsou were this episode, Uraka, too, having faith in Deku, that was a big thing here, where she trusted him. Because there were so many moments where she could have doubted and gone back and did things differently. And Deku's like, trust me, I've got this. And her faith in him was rewarded because they ended up winning because she stuck with the plan and didn't waver. And I think that's so important. And then her ability obviously came into factor there. And then her kind of resolve to be someone to save her teammates and the others. So... and then clearly Shinsou is passed and he's going to be in the hero course. We just don't know which Class 1A or Class 1B because there's not really an opening for either side. So that'll be interesting to see which one he gets placed in. But I'm just so happy for Shinsou that he's going to be in the hero course. It's like, so good. So good. And the hero course, it's just at random. So he could be in either one and it would be equal. It would be the same, right? I talked about in the episode, Mineta had been doing so good. We had not had a pervy Mineta moment this entire season, and then he just had to ruin it, right? He just had to ruin it trying to motorboat Mina. Mineta, no! And then, of course, Mina's like, get off me. But yeah, that was really good. So, Class 1A took it. I forgot that Bakugo's Group 1, so that made it where Class 1B was kind of on the losing end anyway. They either had to win this or it was going to be Class 1A anyway. But, so a very good 11 episodes into the season to get this little mini arc out of the way. I really liked it. And from the preview, it looks like now, like I talked about at the beginning of the episode, of the reaction here, it looks like we're getting ready to see what's been happening on the outside. Because we saw President Mike, we saw Mirio, we saw Eri, and we saw Mirio and Eri in the OP, so clearly we're going to touch base with them and see what's going on. But it was such a feel-good episode. I loved it. I like that we had the reversal of Aizawa and All Might both each worrying about, and in last episode it didn't even hit me to talk about that Aizawa, his ability is to nullify quirks, so if he had to, he could use it on Deku and nullify that quirk and it would be fine. So there wasn't too much danger. It was just All Might being like, we don't know how this works, we need to stop. And I like that they cornered Deku and they're like, so what happened? And Deku's like, Deku did a very good job of covering because he was like, how do I explain this without going into detail? And so he just kind of bluffed his way around it. But Bakugo don't look convinced. And we saw in the preview, it's time to go back into the break room to have a chat. And I like that Bakugo is now included in this break room, too. It was just All Might and Deku, and now Bakugo's thrown in, too, because he knows the secret. So it's now 3 of them. And I'm very curious to know what Bakugo says next episode. Like, what he's thinking. Like, okay, Deku, spill the beans. What's up? What is this nonsense? And it goes back to what Bakugo told him. He's like, I'm working to get stronger. What are you doing? And when Deku's power kind of fizzled there for a second, you could just see Bakugo's face being like, come on, nerd. What are you doing? Pick it up. What's going on? So that's going to be a good discussion, a good conversation. And it was next episode was called The New Power and All for One. So it's like we're going to touch base back on Tartarus. Awesome. I'm like, he just All for One creeps me out so much, especially now that we're getting into the vestiges and the younger brother and all this, and he's like hearing his brother's voice and it's all creepy. Yeah, it's exciting. It's going to be fun plot wise, but I'm like, oh God, what are we doing? So, yeah. This was a good episode. The animation, the tracking shots in this episode have been really, really good. Like, especially Shinsou weaving through the pipes and beams and everything. That was really, really neat. I thought that was really good. The expressions, other than Minetta's kind of dirt face there for a second, everything else was really good. And I don't know, something about the way that they animate Shinsou and about his voice actor, which I think Shinsou's voice actor is also the same voice actor for Sosuke and Free and Arthur and Banana Fish and Asahi and Haikyuu, and I can hear it. I can definitely hear Sosuke when he talks. And I love Sosuke, so maybe I'm biased. But just they really animated Shinsou's expressions, which you don't see his mouth a lot of times, ironically, because that's his power. You see mostly his eyes, and they do a really, really good job of animating this episode and getting his range of emotions, and him and Deku both fighting each other and trying to prove that they've both gotten stronger, and they have both gotten stronger. Shinsou's just kind of at a disadvantage because our main protagonist has a new power, and I like that they addressed that Deku's like, this new power has been manifesting one for all this time, so he's like, I can't just use it whenever. I need to build up my own strength to use it. And I like that caveat because, you know, when you introduce a character and you say, oh, you're going to have all these new powers, it's suddenly like, oh, well, he's just going to be OP. Why do we even have a plot? He can just go in and stop all the bad guys. But that's not exactly the case. He's got to build up his own strength to use one for all. And so to use these other quirks that he's going to inherit. So I like that they touch base on that. Like, this isn't just going to be easy. It's not going to be an easy win for you. You're going to have to build up your strength. And he had to cut it back down to 8% to go against Shinsou, which says something, you know? If Deku's able to take Shinsou with 8% of his power. But this is a really good episode, y'all. I really liked this. I'm very excited. It looks like we'll have one more episode with this current core, and then episode 13 will start the second half. So I'm excited, but I have lots of spoilers to talk about, so I want to get to those. But if you're not sticking around for Spoiler Corner, I hope you enjoyed this reaction. This was a very, very good episode. These last 2 or 3 episodes have been just top notch. So, and I'm excited for where it goes to from here. So, in any case, if you're not sticking around for the spoiler discussion, I hope you have a wonderful week. Stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to y'all again next week with episode 12 of My Hero Academia. Oh, this is so good. I love this episode because it's, again, if you watch this series, if you've read the manga, Horikoshi sets so much stuff up, like hundreds of chapters in advance. And you're like, Horikoshi, what I appreciate about Horikoshi is he kind of has like a very Oda style of storytelling. And it's funny that I say that because I've been watching some reactors, or Semblance of Sanity. I've been watching them read One Piece. And there was a SBS corner in One Piece where Horikoshi actually did an illustration, a fan art piece of One Piece, and submitted it, and it got published. And Horikoshi and Oda recognized that. He's like, oh, hey, this guy that drew a fan art of my series is now a mangaka himself, and he's created My Hero Academia. You should go read it. And I really think that Horikoshi took a page from Oda in terms of storytelling, because Horikoshi, very much like Oda, sets things up way in advance. I mean, it's not to Oda's level. Oda sets stuff up that's like 300, 400 chapters in that you go back to like chapter 5 and realize, and you're like, Oda, have you known this for 10 years? And you've just been waiting to plant this bomb? Like, that's Oda's storytelling, and it's masterful, and I love it. And Horikoshi does something similar. Horikoshi definitely takes a page from Oda, because stuff he's planting now is all going to come back later, and it's like, oh my god. Particularly with Aizawa, and I wanted to note that I've got some panels from the manga when I went back and read This we dropped the pace back down a little bit. We only covered chapters 214, 215, and 216 up until the last 2 pages. So we're back down to like 2.5, 3 chapters per episode, which is good, pacing wise. But oh my gosh. So I did want to bring up this cover art, first of all. The cover is a color spread. It's a fantasy color spread. I love it. I kind of ship Todoroki and Momo a bit, so I really like them in the forefront of this. But I just love the fantasy vibe of this color spread. It's really, really good. And then I also want to bring up this panel of Aizawa. And it's just one panel of Shinsou squirming in the ropes. It's so freaking adorable. But I really love the foreshadowing here of that Aizawa definitely views Shinsou as kind of a protege of him and sees a lot of himself in Shinsou. And that's why he's kind of fond of him and takes a liking to him more so than I think he does other characters. And I'll talk about that here in a second with another panel. But I really love Aizawa. Also, for the record, Aizawa with his hair pulled back, we need more of that, Aizawa. You need to pull up that hairstyle more often. But I really like the conversations here between Shinsou and Aizawa and Monoma about if you're not the main character, if you're not a protagonist with these incredible powers, what do you do? What can you do as a hero? And I said last episode that Monoma and Shinsou have a cool relation in that their powers don't seem suited for the protagonist hero. They're like side character powers or villain powers, but both Monoma and Shinsou make them work. You know, they make them work to their advantage. And I really like that kind of ingenuity that they both have to kind of tailor these powers to suit their needs as heroes. Like, that's really, really cool. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Bakugo couch conversation. I think that we're going to have it, whatever ends this second core here, this first core here is going to come back and be bookended at the end of the season. So I'm going to be curious if they end up doing that to kind of parallel. That's going to be interesting because in the manga, we have this first couch conversation where Bakugo is like, what is his power? What's going on? And then later on, during the Endeavor Agency, after All Might does some research, he comes back to them again and they go back to the couch and he's like, here's what I found. And there's like even more there to work with. So I'm going to be curious if we end this first core and in the second core with this same parallel of them on the couch talking. I'm really curious about that. But yeah, we're building up to My Villain Academia. We're building up to when they said the new power and All for One. I was like, oh, All for One. We're previewing My Villain Academia next episode, and then episode 13 is just gonna jump right in, right? And have the new OP and the ED. It's just good timing. I'm just saying. But I wanted to bring up this panel because I've talked to y'all in the spoiler corners before that Vigilantes, the My Hero Academia, the spin-off series Vigilantes, I really like it. It's very cutesy. The stakes, it takes place in the past, so the stakes aren't as high, right? Because we all know what's happening in the present in the series. So you're like, okay, well, we know these characters are still alive in the present, so whatever happens to them in the past, whatever. But my favorite part about Vigilantes is Aizawa's backstory. And I've been wondering and questioning how they're going to do it. I don't think we're going to get to it this season, but I think we're going to start season 6 with it. And we're kind of hinting at it here. And the anime does a really good thing, and I'm wondering if they're going to touch base on it next episode, because in the preview we saw Aizawa walking with Present Mike. But there's a panel here where when Aizawa's talking to Shinsou and saying that you passed the exam, he's like, you have to find a way to use your powers to help yourself and help save others. There's a shot that isn't shown in the anime, and it's of Present Mike, and it's of Shirakumo. And if you don't know who Shirakumo is, he's a classmate of Present Mike and Aizawa's. There was 3 of them. There was Present Mike, Aizawa, and Shirakumo. And Shirakumo and Aizawa were very, very close. And I would argue that as best friends as Present Mike and Aizawa are, Shirakumo was their best friend too. And in the Vigilantes series, we find out that Shirakumo has like kind of like a cloud power. Like his power lets him fly on a cloud and create clouds. And they are on a mission, like a trial, like a practice exam, and something happens, and then a piece of a building falls on Shirakumo and kills him. And so their classmate dies. And it's really, really sad. And Aizawa's like, I couldn't do anything to save him. He couldn't defend himself. Like, what do we do? And then the twist is, spoilers, major spoilers. We're not going to get this until season 6, but major spoilers. But the twist is that All for One confiscated the body of Shirakumo for his quirk, and they basically made Shirakumo a Nomu, and he's Kurogiri. And it's the most messed up thing, because they send President Mike and Aizawa to confront Kurogiri in Tartarus to get information, and you find out that he's basically the manipulated corpse of his friend, and it's such a reveal, and it's so damn good. And once you see the Vigilante's backstory, it just makes Aizawa's backstory so much sadder, because Aizawa blames himself for Shirakumo's death, and then him seeing Kurogiri, and it's just, oh my god. So I'm really hoping, we got a teaser of that with this panel, and so I'm really hoping that, I don't know if they'll ever animate Vigilantes. I don't know, because it's only at like 100 chapters right now, and it's just little side fluff stories, so I don't know if they'll ever animate it. But I hope if they don't animate it, I hope they take that backstory from Vigilantes and insert it into the anime for My Hero Academia. I hope they do, because it's like, you could get the connection between Aizawa and Shirakumo and President Mike without the Vigilantes backstory. You could get it. It would make sense. But there's just so much emotional weight to having that animated and having that included in the story, that if you've read both series, it gives so much more weight and power to that moment, that I really hope they animate it and include it, because, oh my god, it's such a reveal. I'm like, Horikoshi, you madman. Oh my god. But yeah, so there's that, and then at the very end of the episode, there was 2 pages that was left out of the manga that was not animated in this episode. I'm assuming they're going to start episode 12 with those moments. But basically, Monoma is getting on his monologuing spiel again, being like, "Nay, you may have won the battle of Class 1A, but you haven't won the war," and he gets like all on this big tangent, and Aizawa's like, "Hey, while I've got you here, Monoma, we're gonna go see Eri." And that's where the chapter ends, and Monoma's like, what are we doing? And so the point is that Aizawa wants to see if Monoma can copy Eri's quirk, which would be terrifying, much like if he could copy Deku's quirk, but he doesn't end up being able to copy her quirk. It's too intricate. For good reason. So so much setup, y'all. I to be honest, and I'll probably talk about this next episode, I've liked this first half of the season. It's been fun. It's been a good time. But I was not really a big fan of this arc in the manga, other than Shinsou's story and I honestly, watching the anime has given me a much bigger appreciation for Monoma. In the manga, I kind of blew Monoma off when I first read this arc, and I was like, eh. But going back and rereading and rewatching this, I have a much better appreciation for Monoma's character now, seeing this animated. And the best part of this arc for me was Shinsou, and then seeing Bakugo and Deku's fights. Like, I liked Ida and Todoroki's, and I liked the other battles, but the Bakugo fight and seeing his growth and then seeing Deku get Black Whip, like, that was kind of the highlight of this little arc for me. But I really like My Villain Academia. So I hope that they do it justice. I really do. I know a lot of the fans of the manga are like, we want this done right, especially Shigaraki's backstory, especially all of this. Oh my god. And Twice and Toga and Dabi versus Gekken. It's going to be great. But we'll talk more about that next episode, I'm sure. So, yeah. I hope y'all enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction. And if you comment down below with spoilers, please tag them, especially about Aizawa and Shirakumo. Oh my god. Like, that whole storyline is one of my favorites in this whole series. So I'm really wanting them to do it justice. And so part of me is like, please include the Vigilante story to help flesh it out more. But I don't know if they'll end up doing that or not. But in any case, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 12 of season 5 of My Hero Academia. Bye.